The rain had started out gentle, the kind that barely kissed the sidewalk. But by the time Ethan Parker stepped out of the subway station, it was pouring like the city itself had finally decided to cry. He checked his phone for the third time in a minute. One missed call. One voicemail. From the company he'd dreamed of working for since college. Today mattered. Today was supposed to change everything. Ethan adjusted the worn strap of his backpack and broke into a hurried walk toward the towering glass building across the street. 30 minutes. That's all the interview was supposed to take. 30 minutes that could mean health insurance for his mom, a real apartment instead of the basement room he rented, and a chance, finally, to breathe without counting every dollar. Then he heard it. A sharp cry cut through the noise of the rain and traffic. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just scared. Please, someone help. Ethan stopped. Across the street, near a bus stop, a young girl couldn't have been more than 16. She was hunched over, trying to drag a suitcase with one broken wheel while shielding her face from the rain. A man stood too close, too aggressive, his voice low, his posture wrong. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the fear. He'd seen it before, in his own reflection, in harder years. He looked back at the building. The security guard was already visible through the glass doors. The interview clock in his head started screaming. Don't get involved, his mind said. Just keep walking. But his feet wouldn't move. The man grabbed the girl's wrist. That was it. Ethan crossed the street without thinking, rain soaking his suit, heart pounding. Hey, he called out, louder than he meant to. She said she needs help. The man turned, eyes narrowing. Mind your business. She's a minor, Ethan shot back, positioning himself between them. Let her go. The girl's fingers tightened around his sleeve like he was the only solid thing left in the storm. A tense moment passed. Cars honked. Someone shouted from a window. The man cursed under his breath, shoved the suitcase to the ground, and walked away, disappearing into the rain like he'd never existed. The girl burst into tears. I don't know what I would have done, she said, voice shaking. My phone died. I got lost. He said he'd help me find my hotel. Ethan picked up the suitcase, checking the wheel. You're safe now, he said gently. Let's get you somewhere dry. By the time he helped her call a car service, gave her his umbrella, and made sure she was inside, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered, breathless. Hello. Yes, a clipped voice said. This is Human Resources from Whitmore Technologies. We waited 20 minutes. Unfortunately, the position has been filled. The line went dead. Ethan stood there, rain streaming down his face, suit ruined, heart hollow. Across the street, the black car pulled away. Inside, the girl wiped her tears and looked back through the rear window at the man who had just lost everything. Without knowing he'd just changed her life, Ethan didn't tell anyone what happened that day. Not his mom, not his best friend, not even himself. He just folded the ruined suit, placed it on the chair in his tiny basement room, and lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling as the sound of rain echoed in his memory. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glass building, the unanswered phone call, and the look of relief on the girl's face. Weeks passed. Rejection emails filled his inbox like polite little reminders of failure. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Your qualifications are impressive, but his savings shrank. His mom's medical bills didn't. Some nights, he skipped dinner without calling it that. Still, he didn't regret stopping. He told himself that whenever doubt crept in. One afternoon, nearly a month later, Ethan landed a temporary job delivering documents for a courier service. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid cash and didn't ask questions. On his third day, he was sent to deliver a sealed envelope to a corporate address. That made his stomach tighten. The moment he read it. Whitmore Technologies. The same building. The same glass doors. Ethan hesitated on the sidewalk, memories rushing back. He considered asking for a reassignment, but rent was due, and pride didn't pay bills. He took a breath and walked in. The lobby looked exactly the same: polished floors, quiet efficiency, people who belong there. He handed the envelope to the receptionist, who glanced at the name, then at him. "Please wait," she said. "I'm just the courier," Ethan replied quickly. "No need." But she was already on the phone. Minutes later, a man in a tailored suit approached. He studied Ethan with a curious intensity. "Ethan Parker." "Yes," Ethan said cautiously. "Follow me, please." They rode the elevator in silence, ascending far higher than the interview floors Ethan had once hoped to reach. When the doors opened, they stepped into a private executive wing. The man gestured toward a conference room. "Someone would like to see you." Ethan's pulse thundered. Inside the room sat 3 people. 2 executives he vaguely recognized from company profiles, and a familiar face that made his breath catch. The girl. She looked different now. Confident, dry, composed. But when her eyes met his, they widened in recognition. "It's him," she said instantly, standing up. "Dad, that's the man. The one I told you about." "Dad?" Ethan's mind struggled to catch up. The older man at the head of the table rose slowly. His presence filled the room without effort. "Mr. Parker," he said, voice calm but heavy with authority. "I'm Richard Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Technologies." Ethan swallowed hard. "My daughter lost her way that night," Richard continued. "She made a mistake trusting the wrong person. And then you stepped in, without knowing who she was, without expecting anything in return." The girl smiled softly at Ethan. "You gave me your umbrella," she added. "You missed something important because of me. I never forgot your face." Ethan finally found his voice. "I just did what anyone should have done." Richard's expression softened. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "Too many people don't." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer, but not the one Ethan had lost. It was something far bigger. And suddenly, the worst day of Ethan's life didn't feel so wasted after. Ethan stared at the folder like it might disappear if he blinked. The salary figure alone made his chest tighten. Not from excitement, but disbelief. It was more than he'd ever earned in a year. More than enough to erase the quiet fear that had followed him since his father passed away, and his world became a careful math problem of survival. But something didn't sit right. He closed the folder gently and looked up. "Sir," he said, voice steady despite the storm inside him, "with all respect, I didn't help your daughter to get a job." Richard Whitmore studied him for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. "And that," he replied, "is exactly why you're sitting here." The girl, Emily, let out a small laugh. "I told you he'd say that." Richard nodded. "When Emily told me the story, I didn't send people to look for you immediately. I waited. I wanted to know what kind of man you were when no one was watching." Ethan frowned. "You watched me." "Not like that," Richard said calmly. "We checked your background, your references. We learned you've been supporting your mother since you were 21, that you volunteer at a food pantry on Sundays, that you turned down a cash bonus at your last job because you felt it wasn't earned." Emily leaned forward. "You didn't even post about helping me. Most people would have." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. It didn't feel like something to share. Silence settled over the room, thick and heavy. Richard finally spoke again. "The position you interviewed for that day, junior analyst, it was already limited in scope. You were late. Policy is policy." He paused. "But leadership isn't built on policy alone." He slid a second document across the table. "This," he said, "is a paid leadership fellowship. 6 months. Direct mentorship under me. No shortcuts. No favoritism. You'll be challenged. You'll fail. And if you don't belong here, you won't stay." Ethan's throat tightened. "And if I say no?" He asked quietly. Richard's eyes softened. "Then I'll still know my daughter is safe because of a good man. That would be enough." Ethan thought of his mother, pretending she was fine when her hand shook from pain. He thought of the rain, the girl's fear, the moment he'd chosen to stop walking. He opened the folder again. Not for the money. Not for the title. but for the chance to matter. I'll do it, he said. As long as I earn it. Richard smiled, not the polished smile of a CEO, but the proud one of a father who'd seen the world restore a little balance. The fellowship was brutal. Ethan worked longer hours than he ever had. He was questioned, challenged, doubted. Some employees whispered, accusations of favoritism, of luck. When they found out whose daughter he'd helped, the whispers grew louder. One night, exhausted, Ethan overheard two managers in the break room. "He's only here because of that girl," one scoffed. Ethan didn't defend himself. He just worked harder. And slowly, something shifted. People started noticing the way he stayed late to help teammates, the way he owned his mistakes, the way he spoke up when someone was overlooked. By the end of 6 months, Ethan wasn't just surviving. He was leading. And on the final review day, Richard Whitmore realized something unexpected. Helping his daughter hadn't just saved her. It had revealed the kind of man the company desperately needed. The final review meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. But Ethan arrived early, as he always did. He stood alone by the window of the executive floor, watching the city wake up. Cars moved like veins of light through the streets below. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running just to survive. When Richard Whitmore entered the room, he didn't bring a folder. That alone made Ethan nervous. "You look calm," Richard said, setting his coffee down. "That's either confidence or acceptance." "Maybe both," Ethan replied honestly. "Whatever happens, I'm grateful for the chance." Richard studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Emily still talks about that night." Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm glad she's okay." "She is," Richard said, "because someone chose kindness over convenience." The door opened again, and several executives filed in. Emily took a seat near the wall, offering Ethan a quiet, encouraging smile. The atmosphere shifted, formal, expectant. Richard finally spoke. "6 months ago, this company gained more than a fellow," he said. "We gained perspective." He turned toward Ethan. "You were doubted, questioned, judged unfairly. You never defended yourself with words, only with work. You showed integrity when it was inconvenient, and leadership when no one asked for it." He slid a single document across the table. "Effective immediately. We are offering you the position of Strategic Operations Manager." For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. Then Richard added, "with full benefits and flexibility." Ethan's voice shook. "Flexibility." "So you can be there for your mother," Richard said gently. "Family matters here." Ethan's eyes burned. He stood up slowly, hands trembling. "Thank you," he said, the words barely holding together. "I won't waste this." "I know," Richard replied. Later that evening, Ethan sat beside his mother in her small kitchen. The offer letter between them. She read it twice, then looked at him with tears she didn't bother hiding. "I raised you right," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "You did." Weeks later, on a sunny afternoon, Ethan walked past the same subway station where the rain had once soaked his suit and crushed his hopes. The city hadn't changed, but he had. Across the street, a young man in a hurry brushed past someone struggling with heavy bags. Ethan stopped. "Hey," he called, stepping forward. The moment felt familiar. As he helped, he realized something simple and powerful. Life doesn't reward kindness on a schedule. It doesn't promise fairness in the moment. But kindness always leaves a mark. Sometimes, it saves a frightened girl. Sometimes, it builds a future. And sometimes, it costs you everything, only to give you more than you ever imagined.